Hello friends, welcome to the world of science fiction and forgotten words, Alien Universe. Don't forget to like, subscribe and never miss a new stories and movies from this channel. Thank you.
The night the sky stopped making sound was the night Daniel Harris found her. Daniel had worked at the Desert Research Station for almost 4 years, and during that time, he had learned something important about the desert. The desert was never truly silent. There was always the soft movement of sand, the quiet whistle of wind, or the distant cry of desert animals. But on that night, everything suddenly became still. The air felt heavy, and Daniel felt a strange pressure in his chest, as if something was watching him from the sky. Daniel stepped outside the station building to check the solar power units. He liked working alone because it helped him forget his past. Years ago, Daniel had lost his younger sister in an accident, and since then, he preferred staying away from crowded cities. The desert gave him space to breathe and forget painful memories. As he walked across the sand, his boots making soft crunching sounds, he noticed the wind had completely stopped. He looked around slowly, feeling confused. "That's strange," he whispered to himself. Suddenly, a sharp blue light flashed across the dark sky. Daniel looked up quickly. At first, he thought it was a shooting star, but it moved differently. The glowing object zigzagged through the clouds like it was trying to control its fall. The light grew brighter and brighter, turning the black desert sky into a glowing ocean of blue. Daniel's heart started beating faster as he watched the object crash behind a line of rocky hills about half a mile away from the station. A low rumbling sound reached him a few seconds later, shaking the ground. Beneath his feet, the station lights flickered, and for a moment, Daniel thought the power system had failed. He stood frozen, staring toward the hills. His mind told him to stay inside and report the crash, but something deep inside him pushed him to investigate. He grabbed his flashlight, an emergency radio, and started walking toward the crash site. The desert night felt colder than usual as Daniel moved closer to the rocky hills. The sand under his boots felt loose, making it harder to walk quickly. As he climbed over a large rock, he saw smoke rising into the sky. A strange metallic smell filled the air, mixed with something sweet and unfamiliar. His flashlight beam shook slightly as his hands trembled. Daniel had never seen anything like this before, and fear slowly crawled into his thoughts. When he finally reached the crash site, he stopped suddenly. In front of him was a small, broken spacecraft, half buried in the sand. The surface of the craft shimmered like liquid metal, glowing softly in the darkness. Sparks jumped from its damaged side, making quiet crackling sounds. The ship looked nothing like human technology. Its shape was smooth and curved, almost like it had been grown instead of built. Daniel's breathing became heavy as he walked closer. He circled the craft carefully, looking for movement. The ship was small, no larger than a family car, which confused him. If this was an alien spacecraft, why was it so tiny? He moved closer to the broken opening in the ship's side. The inside glowed with a soft purple light. Daniel hesitated, his mind filled with questions and fear. But his curiosity slowly won. As he leaned closer to the opening, he heard a faint sound. At first, it sounded like a soft mechanical beep, but then it changed. It sounded like crying. Daniel froze. He held his breath and listened carefully. The sound came again, weak and trembling, like a frightened child trying to stay quiet. His heart pounded loudly in his chest. Slowly, Daniel crouched down and pointed his flashlight into the ship. Inside, he saw her. Curled in the corner of the damaged spacecraft was a small alien child. She was no bigger than a 6-year-old human girl. Her skin glowed faintly with a pale silver color, and thin blue lines moved slowly across her arms, like tiny rivers of light. Her large eyes were closed tightly, and her small body trembled with fear. She held a glowing crystal device close to her chest, as if it was the only thing protecting her. Daniel's mind raced with confusion and shock. He had spent his life believing aliens might exist somewhere in the universe, but he never imagined standing this close to one. He slowly lowered his flashlight, not wanting to scare her. The child suddenly opened her eyes, revealing deep violet pupils that reflected the purple light of the ship. She looked directly at him, and for a moment, time felt frozen. Fear filled her eyes instantly. She tried to move backward, pressing herself against the broken metal wall of the ship. The glowing crystal in her hands flickered rapidly, as if reacting to her emotions. Daniel slowly raised his empty hands, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly, even though he knew she probably could not understand him. "I won't hurt you." The alien child stared at him silently, her breathing fast and uneven. Small tears of glowing liquid rolled down her cheeks, disappearing into the air before touching the floor. Daniel felt a painful pull in his chest as he watched her. She reminded him of his lost sister, scared and alone, needing someone to protect her. Suddenly, the spacecraft made a loud cracking noise. Sparks exploded from its control panel, and the purple light inside began flickering violently. The entire ship started shaking, and pieces of metal fell onto the sand. Daniel realized the craft was about to collapse completely. Without thinking, he stepped inside the damaged ship. The air inside felt warm and charged with energy. Warning sounds echoed through the broken walls in an unknown alien language. Daniel slowly approached the child. She watched him carefully, her glowing eyes filled with fear and confusion. The ship shook again, louder this time, and part of the ceiling collapsed behind them, sending sand pouring into the cabin. Daniel reached out his hand slowly. "You have to come with me," he said gently. "You're not safe here." The alien child looked at his hand for a long moment. The crystal in her hands glowed brighter, casting soft blue light across her face. Another loud explosion shook the ship, and the lights inside suddenly turned red. The child flinched, her small body shaking as she looked around in panic. Then, slowly, she placed her tiny glowing hand into Daniel's. Her touch felt warm, almost electric, sending a strange vibration through his arm. Daniel carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, fragile like glass. As he turned to leave, the spacecraft let out a deep metallic groan, as if it was dying. Daniel ran out of the ship just seconds before it collapsed, completely behind him. Sand and sparks exploded into the air, and the glowing wreckage sank deeper into the desert ground. He held the alien child tightly as he ran toward the research station, his heart racing with fear and confusion. As he reached the station entrance, the child clutched the glowing crystal closer to her chest. The crystal pulsed with a faint light, and strange symbols flickered across its surface. Daniel looked down at her, breathing heavily, realizing something terrifying. This child was not just lost. She was running from something, and whatever had destroyed her ship might still be searching for her. Daniel pushed open the heavy metal door of the research station and quickly stepped inside. The automatic lock sealed behind him with a loud click. His breathing was fast, and his arms were shaking from holding the alien child, but he did not stop walking. The station lights flickered for a moment, then returned to normal, casting a soft yellow glow across the empty hallway. The child remained silent in his arms, but her small fingers clutched his jacket tightly, as if she was afraid he might disappear. Daniel carried her into the medical room. The station was not designed for visitors, especially not alien ones, but it had basic emergency equipment. He gently placed her on the examination bed. For a moment, she did not move. Her large violet eyes carefully scanned the room, watching every corner, every shadow, every machine. Daniel stepped back slowly, raising his hands again to show he meant no harm. "It's safe here," he said softly, even though he knew she could not understand him. His voice sounded calmer than he felt. Inside, his thoughts were racing. He had just brought an alien child into a classified research facility. If the government discovered this, his life would never be the same again. But when he looked at her frightened face, he knew he could not leave her alone in the desert. The child slowly sat up. The glowing blue lines on her arms moved faster, almost like her body was reacting to stress. She held the crystal device close to her chest, protecting it like it was the most valuable thing in the universe. Daniel noticed the crystal was not just glowing. It was pulsing slowly, almost like it had a heartbeat. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared inside it, shifting too fast for him to understand. Daniel moved carefully toward the station computer and activated the internal scanners. He wanted to check if the crash had sent any signals into space. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as he pulled up satellite activity reports. As he scanned the data, his stomach tightened. The crash had created a powerful energy pulse strong enough to be detected far beyond Earth's atmosphere. "That's not good," Daniel whispered to himself. Behind him, he heard a small movement. He turned around slowly. The child was staring at him, her eyes glowing slightly brighter. She tilted her head, studying him carefully, as if she was trying to understand whether she could trust him. Daniel slowly picked up a bottle of water and placed it on the table near her. He also placed a small nutrition bar beside it. "You might be hungry," he said gently. The child stared at the food for a long moment, but did not touch it. Instead, she slowly raised her glowing hand and pointed toward the crystal. The symbols inside it began moving faster. Suddenly, a faint humming sound filled the room. A thin beam of blue light rose from the crystal, forming floating shapes in the air. Daniel stepped closer, his eyes wide with shock. The light formed star patterns, moving and shifting until it created what looked like a map of space. Several bright stars blinked softly, connected by glowing lines. At the center of the map, a distant star system pulsed brighter than the others. The child touched the glowing image with her finger, then pointed toward herself. "You're showing me your home?" Daniel asked quietly. The child blinked slowly. The crystal shimmered, and the image zoomed outward, showing a long glowing path between stars. Then the map flickered violently. Dark red symbols suddenly appeared, spreading across the star path like a warning. The child's face tightened with fear. She hugged the crystal tightly, and the projection disappeared instantly. Daniel's chest felt heavy. He did not understand her language, but he understood fear when he saw it. Something terrible had happened to her world, or something terrible was chasing her. He knelt down slowly, so his eyes were level with hers. "You're safe." "Here," he repeated softly. The child studied his face carefully. Slowly, she extended one finger and touched his forehead. Daniel felt a sudden wave of warmth rush through his mind. For a split second, images flashed inside his thoughts. He saw bright silver cities floating above oceans of glowing light. He saw tall alien figures standing under crystal towers. He heard distant voices singing in a language he could not understand. Then the images changed suddenly. He saw explosions tearing through the silver cities. Dark shadow-like ships filled the sky, destroying everything in their path. Screams echoed across the burning world. Daniel jerked backward, gasping for air. The child quickly pulled her hand away, her eyes filled with guilt and fear. The glowing lines on her arms dimmed slightly. Daniel sat on the floor, trying to calm his racing heart. He realized she had not meant to hurt him. She had shown him memories of her home being destroyed. "You escaped," he said slowly. trying to process what he had seen. "You ran away, didn't you?" The child lowered her head quietly. The crystal in her hands pulsed again, but this time its light was weaker. Daniel stood up slowly, his mind filled with new fear. If someone had destroyed her planet, they might still be searching for survivors. And if they could track the crystal's energy, they could track her. Suddenly, the station alarm beeped loudly. Daniel rushed to the main control screen. A warning message flashed across the monitor. Unknown energy signals had been detected entering Earth's upper atmosphere. The signals were faint, but moving quickly, heading directly toward the desert region. Daniel felt cold fear crawl down his spine. He checked the radar again, hoping it was a system error, but the signals grew stronger with every passing second. Whatever was coming was not far away. Behind him, the child let out a small, frightened sound. Daniel turned around and saw her staring toward the ceiling, her eyes glowing brightly again. The crystal vibrated in her hands, reacting to something far away. Daniel walked back toward her slowly. His voice was calm, but his heart was pounding. "Are they looking for you?" The child did not answer, but tears of glowing light slowly rolled down her face. She wrapped her small arms around the crystal and nodded slightly. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. His entire life had been quiet and predictable until tonight. Now, he was standing in the middle of something far beyond human understanding. He could call the authorities and report everything. That would be the safe choice. But when he looked at the terrified child sitting alone on the medical bed, he remembered his sister again. He remembered how helpless he had felt when he could not protect her. Daniel opened his eyes and made his decision. "I won't let them take you," he said firmly. The child looked up at him slowly. For the first time, the fear in her eyes softened slightly. She reached forward and carefully grabbed his hand, holding it tightly. Her glowing skin felt warmer now, almost comforting. The station alarm beeped again, louder this time. The radar screen showed the unknown signals entering Earth's atmosphere faster than expected. The energy signatures were not natural. They were controlled searching. Hunting. Daniel quickly grabbed his emergency backpack and started gathering supplies. He knew the station would not stay hidden for long. If those signals belonged to whoever destroyed her world, they would find this place soon. As he prepared to leave, he looked back at the child. "We need to go somewhere they can't find you," he said. The child stood beside him quietly, still holding the glowing crystal. Its light pulsed faster now, as if counting down toward something dangerous. Outside, the desert wind suddenly returned, howling loudly across the sand. Dark clouds slowly began forming in the once clear night sky. And far above Earth, hidden behind the clouds, something massive moved silently through space, scanning the planet below, searching for the last survivor who had escaped its destruction. Daniel moved quickly through the storage room, filling his emergency backpack with water bottles, medical supplies, and portable power cells. His hands worked fast, but his mind was racing even faster. Every alarm sound inside the station felt like a ticking clock counting down to disaster. He glanced toward the radar screen again, and his stomach tightened. The unknown energy signals were now closer, moving across the atmosphere in strange, curved paths, almost like they were scanning the Earth instead of simply traveling through it. The alien child stood quietly near the doorway, watching him. The glowing crystal in her hands pulsed faster with every passing second. Its light reflected across her silver skin, making her look almost fragile, like she could disappear at any moment. Daniel zipped the backpack and walked toward her. "We have to leave now," he said firmly. She stared at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. She reached forward and grabbed the edge of his sleeve, holding it gently but tightly, as if she feared losing him in the darkness. Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had known her for less than an hour, yet he already felt responsible for her safety. Daniel shut down the station's main systems before leaving. He knew it would delay any tracking signals that might lead to the facility. As the lights dimmed and the machines powered off one by one, the hallway fell into darkness. Only the faint glow from the child's crystal lit their path. As they stepped outside into the cold desert night, the wind had returned, but it felt different now. It blew harder, carrying sharp grains of sand across the ground. Dark clouds covered the stars, hiding the peaceful sky Daniel once loved. He led the child toward his off-road vehicle, parked beside the station. The engine roared to life as he started it, breaking the heavy silence around them. They drove away from the station, just as a faint tremor shook the desert floor. Daniel looked in the rearview mirror and saw distant flashes of light in the sky, far beyond the clouds. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Whatever was coming had already reached Earth. The vehicle bounced across the uneven desert terrain as Daniel drove toward an abandoned mining tunnel he remembered from years ago. The tunnels ran deep under the mountains, far away from any satellite detection. It was the only place he could think of that might hide them. Inside the vehicle, the alien child sat quietly beside him. Her eyes watched the dark horizon carefully, as if she could sense something Daniel could not see. The crystal in her hands flickered again, and faint symbols moved across its surface. Suddenly, it released a small beam of light that formed another floating image. This time, Daniel saw moving shapes instead of star maps. The projection showed several massive, shadow-like ships drifting through space. Their surfaces looked like black metal covered in glowing red cracks. The ships surrounded smaller fleeing vessels, destroying them with bursts of dark energy. The child pointed at the largest ship in the projection. Her hand trembled slightly. "They destroyed your world," Daniel whispered. The child slowly nodded. Her violet eyes filled with tears again. The projection shifted suddenly, showing one small escape craft breaking away from the destruction. Daniel recognized the small craft instantly. It was her ship. It flew through space, damaged and burning, while the dark fleet chased behind it. The projection faded, leaving only the soft glow of the crystal. Daniel felt a heavy silence fill the vehicle. He realized something terrifying. She was not just a lost child. She was a survivor of a complete planetary destruction. And if those ships had followed her across space, they would not stop searching until they found her. Suddenly, the vehicle's radio crackled loudly with static. Daniel frowned and tried to adjust the frequency, but the noise only grew louder. Then, for a brief second, a strange distorted signal pushed through the static. The sound was not human. It was a deep, mechanical voice, speaking in an unknown language, repeating the same pattern over and over. The child flinched and covered her ears. The crystal glowed violently, almost as if it was reacting to the signal. Daniel quickly turned off the radio, but his fear had already grown. That signal had not come from Earth. Something was broadcasting across the planet, searching. Scanning, hunting. The vehicle suddenly jerked as the engine sputtered. Warning lights flashed across the dashboard. Daniel cursed under his breath and slowed the vehicle. The engine lost power completely, forcing them to stop in the middle of the desert. Daniel tried restarting it, but the engine refused to respond. What now? He whispered anxiously. He stepped outside to check the engine. The wind roared louder, throwing sand against his face. As he opened the hood, he saw sparks jumping across the vehicle's electrical system. It looked as if something had disrupted all electronic circuits nearby. Daniel slammed the hood shut, realizing they would have to continue on foot. He turned around and saw the child standing beside the vehicle, staring at the sky. Daniel followed her gaze far above the clouds. Faint. Red lights moved slowly across the darkness. They were too large to be aircraft and too controlled to be natural phenomena. The lights formed a wide circle, scanning the desert below with thin beams that stretched toward the ground like searching fingers. Daniel's heart pounded violently. "They're here," he said under his breath. The child grabbed his hand tightly, pulling him toward the distant mountains. Daniel did not argue. They began running across the sand, the wind howling around them like a warning. The beams of red light swept across the desert behind them, moving closer with every second. The loose sand made running difficult. Daniel's legs burned with exhaustion, but he refused to slow down. The child moved surprisingly fast beside him, her glowing lines shining brighter with every step, almost guiding them through the darkness. The mountains slowly grew closer, their jagged shapes rising like black walls against the stormy sky. Suddenly, a red beam of light swept across the sand, only a few meters behind them. The ground vibrated violently where the beam touched, leaving a deep burning mark in the desert. Daniel pulled the child closer and ran faster, his lungs screaming for air. They finally reached the entrance of the abandoned mining tunnel just as another red beam struck the ground near them. Daniel grabbed a loose metal door and forced it open. The tunnel entrance was dark and filled with cold air that smelled of rust and dust. He pulled the child inside and quickly dragged the door closed behind them. The tunnel swallowed them in. Complete darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the crystal. Outside, distant rumbling sounds echoed as the scanning beams continued sweeping across the desert surface. Daniel leaned against the tunnel wall, gasping for breath. The child stood beside him, still holding his hand. The glowing crystal slowly dimmed, its light becoming softer and weaker. Daniel looked down at her and noticed something alarming. The blue lines across her arms were fading slightly, as if her energy was running out. "You're hurt," he said quietly. The child shook her head weakly, but her body trembled with exhaustion. Daniel realized she was not just tired. The crystal was losing power, and whatever energy kept her alive was fading with it. He looked deeper into the dark tunnel, realizing they had only escaped the hunters for now. They were trapped underground with limited supplies, a failing alien device, and enemies scanning the entire planet above them. The child slowly leaned against him, her small glowing hand tightening around his fingers. For the first time, she looked completely helpless. And deep within the dark tunnel, Daniel began to understand something terrifying. The hunters were not just searching randomly. They were tracking the crystal itself. And the moment its power failed, they would know exactly where she was. The darkness inside the mining tunnel felt heavier with every passing second. Daniel slowly guided the alien child deeper underground, using the fading glow of the crystal as their only light. The tunnel walls were rough and cracked, filled with old rusted support beams that groaned softly whenever the wind moved through the narrow entrance far behind them. Every small sound echoed loudly, making Daniel feel as if something might be following them through the shadows. After walking for several minutes, Daniel found a wider chamber inside the tunnel. Broken mining equipment lay scattered across the house. Dusty ground, untouched for decades. He gently helped the child sit against the wall. Her breathing had become slower and uneven, and the glowing lines on her arms flickered weakly, like lights about to turn off. Daniel quickly opened his backpack and handed her a small bottle of water. She stared at it quietly, unsure of what to do. Daniel unscrewed the cap and demonstrated by drinking first. The child watched carefully and slowly copied him. She took a few small sips, but her eyes remained tired and distant. Daniel sat beside her, thinking deeply. "That crystal," he said softly, pointing toward the device she held. "It's keeping you alive, isn't it?" The child hesitated for a moment. Then she slowly nodded. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had suspected it, but hearing confirmation made the situation even worse. If the crystal failed, she might not survive. He leaned back against the tunnel wall, trying to think of a solution, but his thoughts were interrupted when the crystal suddenly glowed brighter than before. The device vibrated in the child's hands. Strange symbols moved rapidly across its surface, faster than Daniel had ever seen. The chamber filled with a soft humming sound, and the air around them felt warm and charged with energy. Daniel instinctively stepped back as a large beam of blue light expanded from the crystal, forming a detailed holographic projection in the center of the room. The projection showed the same silver cities Daniel had seen earlier in his mind, but this time the image was clearer and larger. Towering crystal structures floated above glowing oceans, and thousands of alien figures moved peacefully through bright, floating pathways. The scene looked beautiful, advanced, and completely alive. The child watched the projection silently. Her violet eyes shimmered with sadness. Suddenly, the image changed. The silver cities began flashing with warning signals. Massive dark ships appeared in the sky, far larger than the ones Daniel had seen before. These ships were enormous, shaped like twisted blades covered in pulsing red cracks. They moved slowly, but carried a terrifying presence, as if entire worlds could disappear under their shadow. Explosions tore through the cities. The peaceful world turned into chaos within seconds. Daniel watched in horror as the alien civilization collapsed under waves of destruction. The projection zoomed toward one central tower, standing taller than the rest. The tower glowed brighter, releasing powerful energy pulses that pushed back the attacking ships. The child slowly raised her hand toward the glowing tower in the projection. Tears rolled down her face as she touched the image. The projection zoomed closer, revealing something hidden inside the tower's center. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. Inside the tower, a glowing energy sphere floated, surrounded by moving crystal rings. The sphere pulsed with enormous power, almost like a living heart for the entire planet. The symbols around the sphere matched the ones inside the child's crystal device. Daniel turned toward her slowly. That energy, it's connected to you, he whispered. The child lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. The projection continued. As the dark fleet destroyed the planet's defenses, the glowing tower began transferring its energy into a smaller containment crystal. The energy sphere slowly shrank, pouring its light into the device until the tower collapsed completely. The projection shifted again. Daniel saw alien guardians rushing through burning hallways, protecting the small crystal device. They carried it toward an escape ship, the same ship that had crashed in the desert. But as the guardians reached the launch chamber, most of them were destroyed by the invading forces. Only one guardian survived long enough to place the crystal into the hands of a small alien child. Daniel felt his breath stop. The projection zoomed closer, revealing the child's face clearly. It was her. Younger, frightened, but holding the glowing crystal as the last guardian sealed her inside the escape craft. The ship launched just seconds before the invading fleet destroyed the entire planet. A hologram faded slightly, but one final image appeared. The crystal in the child's hands opened briefly, revealing the glowing energy sphere hidden inside it. Daniel staggered backward in shock. "You're not just carrying their power," he said slowly, his voice filled with disbelief. "You are carrying your entire planet." The child's shoulders trembled. She hugged the crystal tightly and nodded. Daniel's mind struggled to process the truth. That crystal did not just keep her alive. It contained the last remaining life, energy, history, and knowledge of her destroyed world. She was not simply a survivor. She was the final living connection to an entire civilization. Before Daniel could speak again, the crystal suddenly flickered violently. The hologram shattered into broken fragments of light, and a loud pulse echoed through the tunnel. The ground beneath them trembled slightly. Daniel rushed toward the tunnel entrance and looked outside through a narrow crack in the metal door. His blood turned cold instantly. Above the desert sky, massive shadow-like ships now hovered behind. The storm clouds. Their red cracks glowed brighter, scanning the land with slow sweeping beams. One enormous central ship stood larger than the rest, its surface shifting like it was alive. Thin streams of dark energy stretched from it, spreading across the sky like searching veins. Daniel stepped back slowly, fear rising inside him. They didn't come for revenge, he whispered. He turned toward the child, realization hitting him like a wave. They came for the crystal, and for you. The child looked up at him, her glowing eyes filled with silent understanding. Suddenly, the crystal emitted another sharp pulse. Strange alien symbols appeared across its surface, forming a new projection. This time, the symbols translated themselves slowly into a language Daniel could understand through flashing visual patterns. Daniel watched carefully as the message formed piece by piece. His heart pounded louder with every symbol that appeared. The message revealed something far more terrifying than he expected. The crystal was not only the heart of her destroyed world, it was also a powerful energy source, capable of rebuilding an entire civilization. But in the wrong hands, it could destroy planets just as easily. Daniel stared at the message, unable to breathe. The invading fleet was not just searching for the last survivor. They were searching for the most powerful energy source in the known universe. And the child holding his hand was the only being who could activate it. The crystal suddenly dimmed again, its light weaker than before. The child collapsed slightly against Daniel, her strength fading rapidly. He caught her before she fell completely, holding her fragile body close. Outside the tunnel, the massive ships shifted positions in the sky. Their scanning beams slowly began focusing closer to the mountain range, closer to the tunnel entrance. Daniel held the child tightly, his mind filled with fear and determination. He now understood the true weight of his decision. Protecting her did not just mean saving one child, it meant standing between an unstoppable alien fleet and the last heartbeat of an entire lost world. And as the red scanning beams slowly moved toward the mountains, Daniel realized something even more frightening. The crystal was losing power faster than expected, and if it went dark, she might not survive long enough to reach home. The crystal's glow had become faint, flickering like a dying star. Daniel held the alien child carefully in his arms as he sat against the cold wall of the mining tunnel. Her breathing was shallow, and the glowing lines across her silver skin were fading faster than before. The chamber around them felt colder, heavier, as if the tunnel itself knew time was running out. Outside, the distant rumble of the massive alien fleet echoed through the mountains. The ground trembled softly every few seconds, sending small clouds of dust falling from the cracked ceiling above them. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had spent his life running away from pain, hiding from memories, avoiding responsibility. But now, he was holding the final hope of an entire civilization in his arms. The child slowly opened her eyes and looked at him. The soft violet glow in her pupils flickered weakly. She lifted the crystal with trembling hands and placed it gently between them. The device pulsed once, sending a small wave of light across the tunnel floor. Strange symbols appeared again, forming another holographic projection. This time, the projection showed a path through space, glowing faintly but still visible. The same distant star system appeared again, shining softly like a guiding beacon. but the path connecting Earth to her home flickered dangerously, as if it could disappear at any moment. Daniel stared at the projection, confusion filling his mind. "You want to go home?" he whispered quietly. The child nodded weakly. Tears of glowing light slipped down her cheeks. She placed her small glowing hand over Daniel's chest, directly above his heart. For a brief second, Daniel felt that same warm connection rush through his mind again. But this time, the images were different. He saw her world before its destruction, filled with peaceful skies and shining cities. He felt the emotions of her people, their hope, their kindness, their fear as the invasion began. Then he felt something else, their final message. "Protect the future." Daniel gasped slightly as the connection faded. The child removed her hand slowly. The crystal dimmed again, and her body leaned heavily against him. Daniel looked down at her fragile face, realizing she might not have enough energy left to survive the journey back to her world. Suddenly, the tunnel shook violently. A loud explosion echoed from outside the mountain, sending a powerful shockwave through the chamber. Daniel rushed toward the metal door and peered through the narrow crack again. His breath stopped instantly. The massive central alien ship had moved directly above the mountain. Its enormous shadow covered the desert, and thick streams of red scanning light pierced through the ground like drills searching for hidden life. Several smaller ships circled around it, preparing to deploy landing forces. Daniel stepped back slowly, his heart pounding with fear. He realized they had almost no time left. If the fleet discovered the tunnel, they would take the crystal, and the child would never reach home. He looked back at the projection, still floating faintly in the air. The glowing path toward her star system flickered again, growing weaker. With every second, Daniel's mind raced, searching for any solution, any impossible chance to save her. Then he remembered something. The visible path in the projection was not simply a map. It was a gateway signal, a navigation bridge powered by the crystal itself. But the crystal alone did not have enough energy left to activate it fully. Daniel looked down at the child again. Her eyes were barely open now. The blue lines across. Her arms faded almost completely. The crystal in her hands flickered dangerously, its glow shrinking smaller and smaller. Daniel swallowed hard as a painful realization formed inside. His mind. The crystal needed energy. Life energy. He remembered the warmth he felt when she touched his mind, the connection between their hearts. He did not understand her technology completely, but he understood one thing clearly. The crystal responded to living energy, emotional energy. The power of sacrifice. Daniel gently placed the crystal between his hands and closed his eyes. He remembered his sister's face. He remembered the promise he could never keep. He remembered the pain he carried for years. But now, for the first time, he felt peace rising through his thoughts. "I couldn't save her," he whispered softly, glancing at the child. "But maybe I can save you." The child weakly shook her head, sensing what he was about to do. Small glowing tears rolled down her cheeks as she reached toward him, trying to stop him. But Daniel smiled gently and placed his hand over hers. "You deserve to go home," he said quietly. Daniel focused on the warmth inside his chest, letting every memory, every emotion, every piece of life energy he carried flow into the crystal. The device suddenly reacted. Its glow expanded rapidly, filling the entire chamber with blinding blue light. Strange symbols spun faster and faster around them, forming a powerful energy circle. Across the tunnel floor. The ground trembled violently, as the crystal released a deep humming sound that echoed through the mountain. The holographic star path brightened, transforming into a glowing portal of swirling cosmic light. Outside, the alien fleet reacted instantly. The massive central ship fired a beam of dark energy toward the mountain, attempting to stop the energy. Surge. The mountain shook violently, rocks collapsing around the tunnel entrance. Daniel felt his strength fading rapidly. His vision blurred as the crystal absorbed more of his life energy, but he did not stop. He gently lifted the child and placed her near the glowing portal. The portal pulsed brighter, reacting to her presence. She looked at him, her violet eyes wide with fear and sadness. She grabbed his hand tightly, refusing to step into the portal. Daniel smiled softly, even as his body trembled with exhaustion. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. "Your world still lives inside you." The child shook her head again, tears glowing brighter than ever. She pressed her forehead gently against his. For a brief moment, Daniel saw one final image inside his mind. He saw her people standing peacefully beneath glowing skies again, waiting for her return. But the mountain shook violently as another explosion echoed above them. The portal flickered, beginning to collapse. Daniel used his last strength to gently push her toward the glowing light. "Go home," he whispered. The child screamed silently, her glowing tears floating around her like falling stars. But the portal's energy pulled her slowly inside. She reached toward Daniel one last time, her small hand glowing brightly as it slipped from his grasp. The portal closed instantly, disappearing into silence. The crystal's light faded completely. Tunnel collapsed moments later, burying the chamber under layers of rock and sand as the alien fleet scanned the mountain one final time. Finding no energy signals, the ships slowly retreated into the storm clouds, disappearing into the darkness of space. Days later, rescue teams searching the desert found the destroyed mining tunnel buried beneath collapsed rock. Deep inside the rubble, they discovered Daniel's emergency backpack, and beside it, a single small crystal fragment glowing faintly with blue light before fading forever. Far across the universe, near a distant silver star system, a small alien child emerged from a glowing portal onto a peaceful world slowly rebuilding itself. The skies above her shimmered with familiar light, and towering crystal cities began rising again across glowing oceans. She stepped forward slowly, holding the faint memory of a human heartbeat inside her mind. And under the peaceful alien sky, she whispered one word she had learned from him: home.